Welcome to Just an Average Citizen, the podcast that helps to educate, inform, and empower you to make an impact in Abilene and the Big Country. Welcome to the next podcast I have for you today. Thank you for joining me. This is such a great thing that I'm starting to see momentum come out of. And so I'm really excited. If you would help me out by sharing this with your family and friends, that would be great. Of course, subscribing would be great. Pick the platform that you like and then just let others know about it, because one thing this podcast has always set out to do is just to help to educate you so that you could have information so that you could then take that information and figure out what needs to happen next that's best for you. And so some of you might have heard I've actually filed to run for City Council Place 6. And while that's fun and exciting, I'm not going to talk much about that on this podcast. I have a website that you can look up and join me there at Tammy Fogel for City Council Place 6. And I'll share what my plans are and what we're going to accomplish if you should elect me. And I'm really excited. It's been fun because I've got all this information and getting that all together that I've learned through doing this podcast and just doing city research. It's been neat to see how it all comes together and that there's a lot of stuff there. So you can follow me there, but I'm going to keep focusing on city details because unfortunately things keep moving forward. We have a lot of things going on right now. And I think it's important for us to pay attention and be ready for what's happening in the next few months. So I just want to keep this short and sweet. I always say that every time, but this time I'm really going to try hard. I think there were some really important things that happened. Let me just say this. I think one of the things I've discovered is I'm not sure why, if the information is available for the public to have access to, or if there's information that would help us feel better about decisions that are being made. I'm not really sure why they're not being shared earlier on. For example, when I was asking about the air tanker, the fire and rescue air tankers that were coming to Abilene, and they wanted to take out a CO, or a certificate of obligation, which is a bond, which equals taxes. They want to take it out to pay for some of this to come because there was a grant that the state was providing. I started looking into it and I started asking questions and no information was given. But then when it came time to sign on the dotted line for the not just $1.9 million, but the almost $8 million, so it was a $6 million increase on this tax increase, this bond, then all of a sudden it became a great deal because, no, look, this is what our representative for Texas House District 71, he was able to acquire this grant for us, and it was a big deal, and it was going to make great economic impact, millions of dollars, this and that, and it was like all these great things, and I'm just thinking, man, why wouldn't we have started with that? Because that shifts the conversation, and I keep seeing that happen again and again. Very minimal information is given. When people ask questions, then it becomes a thing of, oh, well, of course we have this, and of course we're doing this, and it feels backwards to me. And I think that what happened on last week at the city council was a perfect example of that. And I think we'll get to that. But first, I want to show you something cool I found. That's not the cool thing I found. Where did I do with it? There it is. The cool thing I found. So sorry about that. So this is actually from the city packet. And I'm so sorry. I don't even have the page number on it. I think it's even what item it is. I'm so sorry, but I can get that later. Maybe you can add that in a minute or add that post editing. But honestly, you just got to start looking at the city packet. But what I wanted to show you for this, which I think is really cool, is we're going to, let's see here if I can do this. You know what? I wanted to zoom in on this, and I think I can do that post editing. So I have an awesome editor. He's the best. But what I wanted you to see is I've never seen this before. So what I wanted you to see is this is Exhibit B. It is for the special election that's being held in May, which is great because when they bring things to us and we get to have a chance to vote on it, we gosh darn better show up. So you better make plans right now. The election is May 3rd. Early voting starts in the end of April, and you better be registered to vote so you can get out and let them know your opinions, because this is what happens. So this happened with our rec centers. This happens with our fire station. This happens with anything that come to us and say, hey, look, this is the sticker price. It's like buying a car. You see the sticker price and you're like, that's great. I want the sticker price. I can do that. And then you go to sign and you realize, oh no, that's not the price. Especially if you finance a car, that's not the price. But what happens is they only tell us the principal. They rarely mention the amortization, the interest that we are paying on this principal. And so I thought I was like, I even told them at City Council, I was like, would you please post this with every kind of bond or anything you do so that we can know exactly what we're paying? Because they're going to come up, they're wanting to, again, the budget's being worked on soon in the next few months. And so I don't know exactly what is going to be taken, what they're going to take loans out on or bonds on, what's going to be able to fit in the budget. We have $13 million to repair buildings for energy savings. We have $70 million-ish, $50 to $70 million in pension funds we have to deal with. There's lots of moving parts, and I don't know exactly how that's going to play out. We won't really know that, and we won't know their plan until July. So we're kind of sitting here going, okay, how's this all going to work out? Especially with the city manager retiring in the middle of this and just how things are going to go forward. We don't know, because as long as I can remember, I know there was another city manager before him, but in my most recent memories, it's always been Robert Hanna and how he does things and what I've studied under how he does things. And so there's a lot of unknowns this year. But what I wanted you to see, staying on track, is that we're trying to vote, or we're getting the opportunity to vote on a $20 million bond right here for the airport. They get some grants and the tune of $50 million. But the problem is because we have to take out $20 million to help meet the cost of repairing the airport, it's going to cost us $11 million. And they could refinance along the way, which there's a fancy word for refinancing city debt, but they don't ever come in under the term or the life of the bond, which is $20 million or 20 years. So we will pay a total, it's not 20, but $31 million unless they get a sweet deal. And right now things are getting not better. So we can't count on it getting better anytime soon. And so I know I've heard we've saved maybe $10 million before by refinancing, but considering that, well, let's go the next number, which again, I think this is so helpful, not because I'm excited about what it says, but I'm excited to have access to this information. Right here, it says we have $386 million in debt. And this part, I thought I did the math, and this may be with the extra $20 million in principal. This is our principal. So we have $500 million in principal and interest in debt as a city. And, I know there's other cities that have this much debt, but the problem is they're not like Abilene. There's differences, and they have other things, I think, going for them that we don't necessarily have, that we're going to have to figure out how. I think, and honestly, most of this is due to water projects. And that's an area that I'm starting to dive into, but I haven't quite got there yet because I've just been figuring out the $160 million in principal that we owe for the city aspect, the non-public works part. And that's a lot of money. And right now, I think it's so interesting because we're seeing what's happening in the federal government. We're not seeing it happen in the Texas government yet, but we need to see where we've got to start holding their feet to the fire, because we can't keep spending this way. We can't keep going into debt this way. And it seems like things are going to that's going to go more in the future, not less. And anyway, so I just really thought this was very helpful. It was exciting to me. I've never seen something so concise and neat. And I will try and share this just so you can see it and look at it and share it and talk about it. Because remember, we talked about the importance is not that necessarily we do a bunch at City Hall right now. The importance is that we start having these conversations with each other. We start talking to each other and saying, hey, have you heard about this? Hey, did you know they're wanting to take out a $20 million bond, and that's actually going to cost us $31 million. That's a lot of money. Do we want to do that? I don't know. Is the airport, which does not really make revenue, worth investing that much money into our children's future for right now? I'm not saying that we can't do it in the future, but right now, is that the best decision? We just have to make hard decisions. I know you're making hard decisions at your home. I know Eggs, I had some friends over for dinner the other night, and I said, in today's time, I would serve you filet mignon, but eggs are just as valuable as like a really good steak. Not that it's that expensive, but I'm just saying there's choices we're having to make now as families that we're going to have to start doing as a city. And I don't know if they're going to do that or if they're going to continue as if there is no issue. And it's hard to find this information out. And like I said, everything's changing midstream here. It's happened before. City managers leave, new staff come in. It's not like the end of the world, but it is just a lot of moving parts. And I'm interested to see how things move forward with that. So there we go. All right. I guess I just messed up today. I'm not really sure what I did. Let me come here. City Council. Okay. So what I wanted to start with was, there's just a couple things on here because I want to wrap up fairly short today, because I do think these are things I want you to chew on and think about. What is the priority of a city? What do we have to do? And what are things that we can let go of and let other people take on because they're in a better position to do that? And the big thing, which was interesting, there was two big things. The thing was the city hall was the chamber was packed. There were so many people there, and I was trying to figure out who it was. It was really confusing because it wasn't like they had a big, they didn't have any, awards or recognition. That's what it's called. They didn't have any recognition. It was just some consent agenda items. There were some ordinances, and then there was the Lancium tax abatement. And so I misread the crowd, which is interesting because it was confusing to me. So I'm glad I misread it because that didn't make any sense. But one of the things that was really big was the animal and fowl ordinance that they're working on. The first reading was this last Thursday at the city council meeting. The final reading will be the next council meeting. And many people were not happy everyone that showed up to speak was not happy about the new regulations. They're trying to make it where every animal over 6 months of age has to be spayed or neutered, or you have to get a special breeder's permit. And if you don't, you can get a Class C misdemeanor up to $500. I think if maybe your pet gets impounded. So I don't know what the enforcement looks like, but it seems to me once again that they're going to be punishing the people who pay attention and follow the laws and not really have much impact on the people who do not. And that's troubling to me because we should make government limited, not create more things that we have to enforce and we have to follow. And every one of those people are like, I'm one of the people that would be following the law and you're going to punish me. And it was interesting. One lady, she was talking about, I don't think I can get to her. She was talking about the fact that they had a dog. She was right before him, I believe. She was talking about, I think that was the first lady. She was talking about how they have a dog show here in Abilene, and you can enter your dog in a dog show, a professional dog show, if they're spayed or neuter. And she mentioned that it was like $2 million that it brought in over the course of 3 days. And so it could be a significant thing that I hope they'll look more into because, they talk about very often, well, the majority is here and this is what they want. Well, the majority said it was a bad idea and we shouldn't be doing this. And so they need to go back. And I think, the order of operations matters. We got this great adoption center. They're maxed out. They can't take any more animals, I believe, or at least dogs. And so now they're trying to work to make that different. I'm not sure what the thinking is, again, because I don't get to ask them and they don't really tell me. And so that was interesting. And then, of course, the next thing that was big on there was the new business that was trying to come in on Buffalo Gap. And it's an automotive center. It was falling in kind of the gray area, and they're reworking the land development code from what I understand. And so the council was kind of confused on what the definitions were. Robert Hanna tried to clarify. The business owner, who was somehow not informed to his knowledge to come to the planning and zoning meeting, explained what his business did. And then the neighbors got up and got to share about their opinions about what that private owner should do with his land. And I tell you what, I understand and appreciate neighbors and their concerns so much, but we've got to start learning where is the process that we get to have a say. And when someone who is a private citizen wants to sell his land to another company, and if that company can fit in the parameters of what the city allows, then the citizens just kind of have to deal with it. And we always take a risk wherever we move. We have to figure out what's going in the future. What does it look like? And sometimes we predict what's happening, and sometimes we get in a bad situation where we're going to have to deal with those consequences. But I thought it was just an interesting dynamic, because it was the neighbors' frustration of their homes, the few that showed up. But also the man who was trying to sell his property was like, I feel like I'm selling it to a good guy, and this is going to be a good business that will be good for the neighborhood, because it's not like open past, 9 to 6, or maybe, no, it's 7 to 6, I think. And so it's not going to be open late. There's not going to be a lot of noises. Like the people who live down Starbucks, I'm sure they would be happy to take an automotive center compared to Starbucks and Golden Chicken, their speakers that are going on all day. But then also just, we have to make sure we know how we actually get to have input. And they succeeded at the planning and zoning building, getting the neighbors, just got the planning and zoning to deny this change of zoning, because again, it was a gray area. And so the business didn't fit in one section, but it didn't fit in the other. And so it seemed like a kind of a gray area. And I was thankful that the city council passed it unanimously for Christian Brothers to open up a business on Buffalo Gap. And so that's exciting to me. We need new businesses. We need businesses, and this one's a reputable one. And so, I think it's a good addition to our city. And I've heard for years that it is just hard. There's so many hoops to jump through. And one thing I have seen is it's not like overt hoops, but it's just like all this red tape that you have to go through to prove that you're a viable business. And it shouldn't be that way. Good business, you can't decide what's good and bad, but there are businesses that we should encourage, and there are businesses that we should discourage. And I'm not sure we always understand the lines right now. So the last thing, I think this was, let's see here. Yeah, there it is. You can go back and watch this. It is actually on the city's website. I don't know why they stopped doing the Facebook page. They used to have it on the Facebook page, which was really nice, but they took that off. Now I have to give this guy, his name is Watson, and his first name has just left me, but he, when we were talking about something, Robert Hanna mentioned an example of I think he was talking about the difference between, I can't remember. Robert Hanna was talking, he said it's a difference between a blue jay and, I think it was the businesses. He said it's a difference between a blue jay and a duck. And he said, they're both birds, but they're very different. And so this guy was filling in for Tim Littlejohn, who was not sick. I don't know if he was sick. He just wasn't there. And so when he asked, the council asked him a question, Mr. Watson, and he goes, he said, Tim Littlejohn is the blue jay and I'm the duck. And it was funny. We all laughed. It was really cute. He seems like a good sport. So there's that one. And then the last one after executives, no. So yeah, I'm sorry. The order of this is just a little confusing. So they actually had this, was it 19? I'm trying to remember which one it was. Oh, it was like 15, I think. Yep. Okay. So I learned something I didn't know. And where do you look this up? And maybe I will look it up and see if I could have found it on my own, but you don't know what you don't know until you don't know. And so I knew this was a little bit different situation than normal. The TERS, but it's a reinvestment zone. So maybe it's not a TERS. I don't know. I'm kind of confused. This is one area where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I think I've talked about it as a TERS. It's a reinvestment zone. And it makes me sound like I'm kind of ignorant right now, but I'm really not. So basically we have the downtown TERS, which invests property taxes back into the property owner's improvement or the improvement of the area for a season, 30 years typically. But this is a reinvestment zone of a different accord. It's required to make a tax abatement. And so it's probably not called a TERS, but again, I don't feel like the information is given out beforehand. And maybe it was, and maybe I'm not paying attention. I will give grace for that. But, they're just getting a tax abatement. And so again, all this information would have been so awesome had they said it a couple of councils ago, because I think people would have been really not as stressed about hearing this big company coming in worth hundreds of millions of dollars and they're getting a tax break. What's worse to hear this really rich corporation getting a tax break or this business getting, it sounds nefarious, but it's really not, because in order to be competitive, you have to give deals to businesses to make it worth their while to come. And so while it is an 85% tax abatement, they're getting 15% for the next, for 10 years. And then there'll be another 10-year abatement. or there has been a 10-year abatement and there's a new one. I wasn't quite confident in exactly the timeline, but once the abatement's up, it can't be reabated, if that makes sense. And so we're going to be getting like $4 million, I think, a year in taxes from this company until it gets established. And then once it starts to becoming more established, we'll get better benefits from it. So it's a good thing for the community. There's still questions on the resources. And I really was thankful. There was a man whose name was Mark Teague, came and spoke at the last one. I believe this was after executive session. He came and spoke, and let me see if I can zoom a little forward. Yeah, I think he'll get up here in just a second. He actually lives near the area, and he came up as he worked in economics for 30 years and banking and financing. And then he was like, listen, we're setting the precedents for what happens for years to come, because we're on the forefront of this industry, and how we set this tax abatement up, how we set up the relationship with the city will affect the deals in our area, not only our area, but in probably across the market. And so it's really important that we set a really healthy, mutually beneficial situation. And he asked some great questions, and I'm not sure if they'll follow up or if they have answers, but they did come and talk to him afterwards and just clear up one thing, I think is what I overheard. But it's hard because, again, this has been in the works for 5 years. The full deal has been in the work now. It's Lancium and Crusoe has been in the works for the last couple years. And so I don't think there's much that we can do to stop it. There's a possibility we could stop it, but I don't really know if that's even a tactic worth employing right now, because that's where we come in. And that's what I have found is, as I've been spending time paying attention to city research and doing all that I need to do, I start catching the front end of these deals and start being able to talk to people ahead of time. As I can. Now, like deals with the $1 million dog park, that came out of nowhere because they were talking about 2 parks, one on the north side, one on the south side. And the next thing we know, the next thing we hear, here's our $1 million dog park. That's crazy. So not always, but there's a lot of times we can catch it early enough and start seeing where they're going and what they're doing. And I think that's helpful. And that's why it's so important that you subscribe to this podcast and share it with your family and friends so that you can start getting in the loop of how things work, because government does not move fast. It is a very slow process. There's so much red tape they have to go through and make sure it's all checked and balanced and all this stuff. And so we can start to know things going on by paying attention, and we can't know all things, but we can start to know better. And then when we start paying attention, then they'll start giving probably more information because we're requiring it. So it's a really good thing. And so I want to point out again, if you're new to my podcast, this is my name tag that I started wearing because it says my name, Tammy Fogel, just an average citizen. And I want you, if you see me, to say hi and tell me you're just an average citizen too, because there's nothing special. I'm putting this gold name tag to point out the fact that we are all citizens in this community and we need to be engaged and involved so that we can make an impact in our community. And that starts by being informed and knowing what's going on. And I hope this podcast gives you some tools to help you step in that direction. And so I think your brain has probably been stretched a little bit. I went still a little longer than I hoped because there's so much to talk about and I didn't even talk about everything. So I hope this helped you to be more informed, educated, and empowered to make an impact in Abilene. Until next time.